Let me say a special good morning to the people present here, the political leader and the leader of the opposition, members of the media, those of you listening to us on live stream, and those of you especially listening to us in the diaspora. This morning's press briefing, I'd like to focus on what is happening in St. Lucia today. That is the fact that St. Lucia is a country in rapid decline. The PJP, that means the Philip J. Pierre administration, has abdicated many of its core responsibilities. As we know, one of the primary responsibilities of any government is the security and protection of its people, and the maintenance of law and order. We also expect that a government, especially in a country like St. Lucia, would lead the way in upholding democracy and, of course, preserve civility. We see a total lack of regard for human life in St. Lucia as demonstrated by our government. And in case you are wondering exactly what I'm talking about, I will take you back to the COVID-19 pandemic era. During that time, when the pandemic broke out in St. Lucia, there was a United Workers' Party government led by the Honorable Chastanet. It was remarkable indeed the manner in which that administration handled the preservation of life and the preservation of livelihoods. Since then, during the pandemic, there was a general election which led to a change in government, and we saw the Philip J. Pierre administration assuming office. While during the tenure of the Chastanet administration, we saw a mere 80 lives being lost. Immediately upon assuming office with the St. Lucia Labour Party, some 400 St. Lucians perished, more than 400 St. Lucians perished in a short space of time because of the poor handling of the COVID-19. And that is despite the fact that there had been a blueprint, a pathway in which to handle the COVID pandemic that was effective, as had been demonstrated by the previous administration. That is a clear indication of the callous disregard for human life by a government leading a country. In addition to this, we know that we have had the perennial problems of health care in St. Lucia. And in recent times, in the last few days, the problem was highlighted as being the worst that it has ever been. And this was done by credible people, not by political operatives, by credible people who are actually health practitioners operating at the institutions that were referred to. And we were told that the situation had become so bad, so deplorable, that it was resulting in the unnecessary loss of life of St. Lucian. Once again, instead of the government of the day reacting with concern and demonstrating the care for human life in St. Lucia, what we saw was the flagrant abuse of the messenger, the president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, who penned a letter highlighting those ills and those shortcomings of the health institutions. In addition to this, we also know that now St. Lucia is gripped in a wave of violent crime, especially gun crime and gang violence. As a result of this, we have seen a record loss of life through homicide in St. Lucia. Many young men in particular have perished as a result of violent crimes and gun violence. And what we have seen as a response from our government is simply to create more jobs, create more offices for their members. Very often, we have multiple murders taking place, especially over weekends. And the lack of regard and the callous lack of concern for the loss of human life is demonstrated by the fact that you do not hear a word coming from the government, despite the many portfolios established for dealing with crime in St. Lucia. I want to remind you that we have a Minister of National Security. We have a Minister of Home Affairs, we have a Minister of Crime Prevention. Yet, we hardly hear anything of substance or any demonstration of concern coming from the government. Again, this is because the lives of St. Lucians are mere statistics to our government, and they do not care about us. We want to ensure, too, that in a democracy in St. Lucia today, to prevent the decline of the standards that have been set over the years, that there is good governance. We want a government that will operate above board and a government that will be accountable to its people. What we have seen instead is a government characterized by secrets, by telling lies, and by spreading propaganda. And if I have to go into further more detail, let me just indicate for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about. We have a government that has undertaken some major projects in this country, such as the handing over of our ports to GPH, which is a foreign company, and they have refused to provide to the public details on the transfer of this vital asset, one of the main assets in St. Lucia from which we derive our resources, the ports. And so we are understanding that the Castries port and the Soufrière port will be turned over to Global Port Holding, GPH, for possibly 40 years, during which time they will accumulate a massive over 400 million US dollars, translated to EC, that is over $1 billion EC dollars, while St. Lucia will be making a meager $100 million. That in itself is no kind of deal for a government that cares about the welfare and well-being of its people. As has been referred to by a colleague of mine, that is a steal of one of the assets and the patrimony of our people of St. Lucia in favor of a foreign company. I want to also draw your attention to the halls of justice, where we have very little information, but we are aware that a contract was issued again to a foreign company, NH, and it is the foreign company that informed us, first of all, that the construction of the building will cost $143 million, while we have to repay over a period of 12 years more than $200 million. Again, another deal that demonstrates that it is a steal in favor of and behalf of a foreign company. We have the National Lottery Authority, the NLA, where we heard that $80 million was borrowed by the NLA in preparation for World Cup cricket. Again, talking about secrets, we were not given any details as to what exactly that money was going to be used for, where it would be spent, how it would be spent, and what exactly we were expecting for $80 million. At the end of the day, it was said that the Crosley playing field, the Darren Sammy Stadium, and the Mindu Philip Park were upgraded. But if you visit those facilities yourself, you will not see any indication that anything close to $80 million was expended. Not even the contractor could have been revealed to us. When asked by a reporter, the Minister of Sports refused to divulge the information as to who is the contractor. This is the type of governance that takes place here in St. Lucia today. That's the kind of arrogance that we see in government here today, where our government feels that it does not owe us accountability, that they are not responsible to us to provide us with the information as to what exactly they are doing with our funds, with our resources, and with our assets. I also want to point to St. Jude's. And you heard a lot of rumors and all kinds of deceitful comments about the construction of St. Jude Hospital while the current government was in opposition. However, since they have assumed office, the many things that they said in opposition has been exposed to have been lies. However, they have not justified abandoning the new hospital that had commenced and was almost completed by the previous government, and they have instead borrowed over $200 million from the Saudis to complete the hospital, which after 3 years has still not been completed. We do not get updates as to what exactly is taking place. We are hearing that foreigners are being brought in from India to provide labor on the project, while in St. Lucia we have young people who are seeking employment. All of these things are clear indications that the government has no regard and does not care about the citizens of St. Lucia. I want to further point out what has happened in the CIP program. Again, when government is being asked to account to us, as they should, on what exactly is happening in the CIP program, the minister who is responsible directly for the CIP program said to a reporter that he would first have to get permission from Galaxy, which is another foreign company, as to whether or not he'll be allowed to divulge to us what is supposed to be public information. I want to remind St. Lucians that the CIP program was set up by the St. Lucia Labour Party in a previous term, and the rules, regulations, and laws governing the CIP unit were established by that same St. Lucia Labour Party. One of the requirements is that, by law, the CIP unit must present to the minister an audited report annually, which that minister, which is the Honorable Dr. Ernest Hille, must present to Cabinet, not to Cabinet, but to Parliament on an annual basis. For the last 2 years, he has failed to do so, in breach of the laws governing the CIP in St. Lucia. What is it that there is to hide? Why are we not being provided information on the CIP program? And why is the government not forthcoming and answering the pertinent questions that are being asked of it, while we are hearing a foreign developer who is operating in St. Kitts making all kinds of allegations and accusations as to corruption, illegality, and underhand activities taking place in our CIP program, to the extent that St. Lucia today has to answer in a RICO court in the United States to clear our good name as far as the operations of our CIP program is concerned. We are hearing that over $1 billion is unaccounted for, and that the number of passports that are being issued to Galaxy far outstrips the amount that is being invested in the real estate program. And there is now the infrastructural program that we have very little to no information on. Again, the secrets being harbored by a government who is supposed to be and who promised to be transparent and open with its people. When there is any information forthcoming from our government, what we get are outright lies coming from government officials, starting from the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. And I want to remind you that during the 2021 election campaign, there were a number of lies perpetrated, which, unfortunately, the United Workers' Party did not debunk. They did not take the time to dispel those lies. And even when they did, St. Lucians paid very little heed to what was being said and fell for the lies instead. One such example is what was said and what is continued to be said about the Cabot project in the north. Cabot project was vilified by the St. Lucia Labour Party. There were accusations made by the St. Lucia Labour Party that the government of St. Lucia, the then United Workers' Party, sold our lands to Cabot. An absolute untruth, which is known by all of the people who are repeating that lie. Cabot was in private hands. It was the possession of a private entity that was in receivership and was sold to a developer, Cabot, and had nothing to do with the government of St. Lucia. So I repeat, the Cabot lands were private lands, and the government officials who are repeating the lie that our government sold St. Lucia's property to Cabot know that that is an untruth. The next thing that was done was the condemnation of the fact that the NIC borrowed money to Cabot to assist in the development of the property. They know very well that the NIC engages in investments to augment the contributions made by our workers so that when the time comes, there will be sufficient resources to provide for their pension. That is simply an example of what was done, but again, they made it sound as if the government of St. Lucia gave to Cabot pensioners funds for the development of their project. The DSH project was another project where we heard and continue to hear many lies coming from the government. Even up to last week, a government official, a government minister repeated the untruth that 1,000 acres of land was sold to the DSH project for $1. The truth is, 300 acres upon which the horse racing track sits was leased rather, not sold, but leased for $1. And that project, the horse racing track, was financed by the developer, Theo Akim, with his funds. The other untruth is that the government of St. Lucia, then the United Workers' Party government, gave 900 passports under the CIP program to Theo Akim. That is a lie, and the present government who is perpetuating that lie knows that that is a lie. While Theo Akim under the DSH program applied to be part of the CIP program, we never got to the point of actually implementing that request for them to have passports for sale. So Theo Akim in reality and in fact has not sold one St. Lucian passport, and that is common knowledge to the ministers of government who are repeating the lie. And so when we also look at what has been said about the housing projects that were being embarked upon by the United Workers' Party during its last administration, the Shock and Talvin housing projects, again, outright lies were told. As soon as the government assumed office, the Minister of Housing, Richard Frederick, immediately terminated the project and came on radio and television and indicated to the public that he had no choice but to terminate the project because there was no DCA approval. The minister knew full well and very well that there was in fact approval by DCA and that he had terminated the project for political reasons, to settle their political vendetta and to put off track anything that had been started by the previous administration, especially if it had the signature of the leader of the United Workers' Party, Alan Chastanet. We have heard many other lies. For example, we are being told by the current Minister of Investment, who is responsible for CIP, that we were the one who set up the escrow account in China and so on. We did set up an escrow account with Galaxy in Hong Kong, but the current escrow account had no problem with it. And in fact, when they came into office, they were able to verify all that we were saying as far as the funds being there. They were able to verify that. When it came to due diligence, the company doing due diligence during our time is not the same company doing due diligence right now. And so these are just some of the lies that have been perpetuated. Of course, there are many others, like the Prime Minister promising St. Lucians $1,500 upon assuming office and then turning around and saying to Andre Paul that he actually never said it. And even when a clip was played with him saying so, he continued to deny it. We again just this week heard the Prime Minister denying that he actually heard his hand-picked, selected minister, who is his spokesman, that is Richard Frederick, making vile remarks, attacking a medical practitioner, the president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. Richard Frederick's vile attack was done in the presence of Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, because if you watch the clip in its entirety, you would see when he came to the podium, he actually greeted the Prime Minister as his boy. Now, we understand if the Prime Minister is Richard Frederick's boy and is afraid of reprimanding Richard Frederick when he abuses his office, but we in St. Lucia are not Richard Frederick or Philip J. Pierre's boys and girls to be disrespected in the manner that they do. And when the Prime Minister was called upon to admonish or even make a statement of condemnation about his hand-picked minister's behavior, and let us not forget, Richard Frederick was not a member and is not a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party. He was handpicked by the Prime Minister of St. Lucia to serve in no other place but his own Prime Minister's office. And Richard Frederick, in addition to being responsible for the portfolio of housing, is the government's main mouthpiece presently. He speaks on behalf of the government. And it would appear that he does, as was said in a clip earlier on, where two government ministers were involved, or allegedly involved in blackmail. It was said that the Prime Minister himself was involved, but he had the current Minister of Social Transformation, Honorable Joachim Henry, doing his dirty work for him. It would appear that in other cases, he has Richard Frederick doing his dirty work for him. And so he denied hearing the comments made by Richard Frederick, only to challenge the reporter later as to what exactly Richard Frederick said. So that is the kind of disrespect for our intelligence that is taking place at the highest level. And so to end, I just want to say that in addition to the lies, it is now laced with a lot of propaganda. And one of the propaganda that you're hearing today is that the United Workers' Party and its leader, Alan Chastanet, are enemies of state and are trying to destroy the country. Well, we are not. We are actually in the process of trying to save our country from the degradation that has taken place for the last 3 years under the St. Lucia Labour Party. And I just want to end by saying that when it comes to civility, the government has set a very poor example for the rest of us. And as we know, people take example from the top. I want to once again refer to the scathing attacks of intimidation and abuse that comes on a weekly basis from the Prime Minister's hand-picked mouthpiece, Richard Frederick, where he attacks people, ordinary citizens of St. Lucia and professionals in St. Lucia on a weekly basis, especially women, like Dr. Merle Clark, like Miss Barbara Jacob, like Minerva Ward, and others. We, as a result, see that trickling down, where I cringed when I saw a clip recently of a former police officer, a retired police officer who had served no less in the SSU, standing outside the passport office and attempting to go inside to shelter from rain, and he was unceremoniously pushed out and treated in an undignified manner that is unbecoming, especially for a person who has made his contribution in serving St. Lucia. But then again, that is the example that is being set at the top, and that is what we get at the bottom. No wonder there is no regard for life among our young people today, and that is because our government itself does not care and sets the worst example. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to seek everybody's indulgence this morning because there are a couple of critical issues that I'm compelled to respond to. I wish I could focus my attention on maybe one, possibly two items, but the manner in which this current administration is governing our country and the number of things that are coming to light at such a rapid pace really compels me as the leader of the opposition and also as the political leader of the United Workers' Party to address some critical things. So first of all, this morning, I want to be able to address what I consider to be a crisis in our country, and it really is healthcare. And I think that sometimes we have to go back in history to remind ourselves again what a person's position was previously and the excuses that they are currently giving us today. And I want to speak specifically to a press statement that was made by the then Shadow Minister of Health, who is the Member of Parliament for Vieux-Fort North, Mr. Jean-Baptiste. He was specifically talking about Owen King Hospital. And he said that, and when I'm speaking, this is in 2018, so he's making the comments about my administration at that time. He said, this government, which means United Workers' Party government, continues on a path that is not in the best interest of the public health care system and not in the best interest of St. Lucians. The government has gone to war with our medical professionals and with our engineers. They've declared open war on anyone group who dares to disagree with them. We remain absolute in our view that the statement of the Minister Guy Joseph remains more disturbing questions about the true intentions of the government for the St. Jude Rehabilitation Project and for the privatization of Owen King Hospital. Very importantly, whilst all the talk and attention has been on St. Jude and OKEU, the government refuses to focus on the plight of the people of Soufrière, tourists and surrounding communities who need the services of the Soufrière Hospital. It is a tragedy to witness the difficulties that the people of Soufrière have to endure. And after the first fire of the hospital, it is clear that the Minister of Health did not take the necessary and adequate actions to safeguard the hospital. Finally, the minister's pronouncements that the people who voice disagreement with them are destabilizing the country are arrogant and shows the dictatorial and vindictive attitude of this UWP government. The St. Lucia Liberal Party rejects the proposal to give the people of the South and St. Lucia on half of a St. Jude hospital. We continue to reject the privatization of the Owen King Hospital and insist that the government pays more attention to the plight of the people who use the Soufrière Hospital and call on all St. Lucians to be even more resolute on our demands of the UWP government to put our people first. We then had an article that came out in May of 2018. And I'll just read some of it. And this is an article, St. Rose, SLMD vindicated on St. Jude completion possible within a year. Okay? I don't know if you got that. I want to make sure that everybody can see the document. So I read from this document. It says, As regards to the completion of St. Jude, remember this is from the Medical and Dental Association. And at that time, there were two people that were really pushing the agenda of that association, and it was, if you remember, was Dr. St. Rose and Dr. Stanley were the two persons that were really at the forefront of these statements. It says, as regards the completion of St. Jude Hospital, the government should disclose publicly a time and cost specific schedule. The government should disclose publicly a time and cost specific schedule. The final technical audit ought to be made public, and the start date for commencement of works at the East Wing be given immediate effect. Our technical experts, means the technical experts of the Medical and Dental Association, have indicated that a short but a phased approach of maximum of no more than 4 months should suffice. So what they're saying is that they believe that the government should put a plan in place to move into the old building, and according to their experts, that the East Wing would have taken 4 months to complete. The remaining of the hospital can be completed in a maximum of 10 months. St. Jude Hospital should continue to remain statutized, but fully public operation. Our workers and patients need immediate relief from the George Odlum Stadium. This is May 29th, 2018. The recommencement of the transition to OKEU needs to start immediately and completed in a maximum time of 3 months. The national health insurance should be governed by a statutory authority where savings are to be reinvested in enhancing services, equipment, personnel, and physical plans. In the coming days, the SLMDA will be putting the Labor Commissioner and the Public Health Department on notice as we intend to deal with the increasing complaints from our healthcare workers in relation to the worsening working conditions. These appalling conditions, along with deteriorating and failing equipment at our main health facilities, poses increasing medico-legal risk to our physicians while endangering the lives of patients. How can that ever be acceptable? May 2018. It goes on to say, the SLMDA will no longer sit in silence while being blamed by the authorities for adverse events and misadventures occurring during our quest to save lives and under these deplorable and inhumane conditions. In the interim, our governments must be some soul searching and find their conscience in deciding whether they represent special interest or the interest of the public who elected them to office. And in closing, the SLMDA would like to call on the government to engage all stakeholders and public in these healthcare matters at the earliest in an honest, objective, and transparent manner, as promised by the Prime Minister. SLMDA reminds the government that as stakeholder, SLMDA is best positioned to make suggestions and to give advice in a way in which no other stakeholder can contribute, being engaged actively in healthcare delivery on a day-to-day basis. We note that the Minister Joseph made absolutely no mention of the SLMDA in articulating the government's new policy on healthcare, which is understandable based on his previous representations. So this comes in a time where the Medical and Dental Association last week made a statement about the state of affairs at OKEU. So I want to say that healthcare is a vexing issue in this country. And there is no easy solution. Many countries around the world are grappling with the problems of healthcare. Unfortunately for us, we have seen many different models at play throughout the world. We've seen some that succeed, and we see some that don't succeed. But also, in choosing whichever system, we must be cognizant of our own limitations. Because we're a country of 180,000 people. Not only do we have limitations in money, but we also have limitations when it comes to talent. The Labour Party, while in opposition, and I dare say in absolute collusion with Mr. St. Rose, Dr. St. Rose, because remember, Dr. St. Rose wanted to be the candidate in Choiseul. There was no hiding that fact. So was he now posturing and grandstanding at the expense of the government and the people of St. Lucia to promote his own political ambitions? Or was he really genuine in about these statements? And remember, I've shown you that the minister, the shadow minister, echoed those same statements and spoke specifically also, he also spoke about Soufrière. I say that because here it is 3 years later. Has the project in Soufrière progressed? Are the concerns that he brought up, are they not relevant today? Are the concerns that he had about OKEU and about St. Jude's, aren't they relevant today? And I say that because they were imposing upon my government a timeline that was impossible. The fact is that they had 5 years and they could not complete St. Jude's. And we now know factually that 4 months or 10 months to move into the old St. Jude's, those were just words, chemical and paint, and we would be in and retile the place. Where are those same persons that made those outlandish, irresponsible allegations? Today they find themselves on the OKEU board. They find themselves as chairman of the housing committee. They've been placed within government. Just like we saw media people who claim to be speaking objectively about the government have now been strategically placed in government offices and representing the government. We cannot forget that. So at a time where my government was absolutely trying to find a solution to the problem, we were left with OKEU. The only thing that the former government could have done was a naming ceremony. Let's not forget that. And by the time we came into government, literally all of the guarantees on the equipment at the hospital had expired. An MRI machine that was shipped down here, put into the building, and has not operated for 1 day. Let us not forget that this was a government that had completed the dialysis lab and lied to the public of St. Lucia that the dialysis lab was not ready. Because we said you could have at least opened up the dialysis lab without opening up the hospital completely. All that was missing in the dialysis lab were the beds, and the beds were in a container. We know for a fact that the government does not have enough resources to have operated the healthcare system when we were at Victoria Hospital, far less now moving into OKEU and having to prepare ourselves now to move into St. Jude's. So this idea of universal health care is pie in the sky unless you're going to find some form of new revenue and dedicate it to the operations of the hospital. And we felt, after looking at all the different models in the world, the most effective way to do that was through a healthcare insurance. We repeatedly said, government will continue to pay the salaries of the staff, nurses, doctors, everyone. The government would pay for all the utility costs at the hospital, and the government would pay for all the capital cost. And to keep the insurance premium at a manageable level, that all we would do is pay the basic operating expenditures of the hospital and the services that would come from the insurance program. We also felt that the non-communicable diseases of diabetes and hypertension were things that we could achieve and overcome in a short period of time. By everyone having an insurance program, it means that every single St. Lucian would have to get a healthcare check. So very similar to what's just happened with the census, where they're saying that our population, based on their own inquiries, and that's, through a questionnaire, this is not even by confirming it through a doctor's health check. I think that many people who probably don't even know that they have diabetes, and there are many people who probably don't even know that they're suffering from hypertension. So the first thing the insurance program would resolve is a prescription, medication. People would be able to go to the hospital and there actually would be medication and there would be supplies. And that healthcare insurance would be used for the maintenance of those pieces of equipment. Anybody who wants to be truthful, remember the multitude of examples I used to give. I said, when we're moving from Victoria Hospital, where you had a mechanical bed, I said, and it gets mashed up. That's easy for us to fix. We have the expertise in St. Lucia to fix it. But when now you go to a mechanical bed, where it's a chipboard, it means you have, as part of your preventive maintenance, you must have a regular supply of chipboards on island. Despite how many times we said to the government, and to the opposition and to the people of St. Lucia, we were not going to privatize OKEU. The initial talks were about rebuilding the fifth wing and operating a private hospital there. But that came in conflict with Tapio and some of the other doctors. So we quickly abandoned that idea and we said we would move the private hospital to the second floor of the St. Jude's Hospital, the new St. Jude's Hospital. The ground floor would be for locals, and the top floor would be the International Hospital that would also provide services for St. Lucians. We were waiting to introduce the healthcare insurance so that we could move into OKU and be able to afford it, because the claims were at $75 million to operate it. We didn't believe if Victoria was operating at $35 million, and the intention was to close down Victoria and take the $35 million and apply it towards OKEU, you're still $40 million short. But we believed it was going to be much higher than the $75 million. And so we were waiting to introduce the healthcare insurance, but as we were about to introduce the healthcare insurance, COVID struck. And in order to deal with the crisis of COVID, which was a respiratory problem, we decided to convert Victoria into a respiratory hospital and move immediately into OKEU. We brought in Cayman Health City to help introduce a new operating system, to provide training, but more importantly, wherever the gaps were at a technical level, they would bring those persons in temporarily until a St. Lucian could be trained for that position. We managed the transition process. We got OKEU fully operational. I go through this because we must appreciate where we are today and to be able to call out our government when they have lied or are acting deceitfully to us. The Prime Minister yesterday announced That's coming after a letter from the Medical and Dental Association. First of all, he denies that his minister ever ridiculed the head of the the president of the Medical and Dental Association. We now all know that that's a lie. This feeble excuse, well, did he mention her by name? Everybody in the room knew who he was talking about, including him. But that's become a pattern of behavior of denial. Even though our own very eyes and our own very ears can confirm to us he was in the room when Richard Fedrick said what he said. And there's been further malignment of the president, so much so that the Medical and Dental Association has today put out, or yesterday put out, a press statement in support of the president and condemning the attacks on her and reiterating that the sentiments that were expressed in the letter represent every doctor. Every single doctor. So why is that important? That's important because the Prime Minister yesterday said that he is obtaining $15 million immediately. $10 million that's going to come from CIP, and $5 million, he said, from the Ministry of Finance. So you're telling me a government that says that they care about the people of St. Lucia, a Prime Minister that says he cares about the people of St. Lucia, would have allowed the situation at our healthcare services to reach the extent where the doctors gave a damning statement. It's never been worse. Basic medication, Panadol and ibuprofen, are not there. Sheets, the inability to provide services, and warning that people will suffer. And sadly, a mother has lost her 3-year-old child. Is it neglect? Is it we didn't heed the warning? And so when the Prime Minister wants to come and tell us at this point that he's going to, there's a $15 million problem, a $15 million problem doesn't just suddenly appear. It doesn't suddenly appear. It's irresponsible. When we speak about maladministration, and in this case, because we're dealing with people's lives, I will go as far as to say that their behavior and actions are criminal. Criminal. And Mr. Prime Minister, you thinking that all of a sudden and saying, I know people are going to expect there's an immediate result of the $15 million? That's an insult to all of us. Where's that sense of urgency? Especially when you were in opposition, you said that the government should stop traveling around and focus on the healthcare issues. When there was a very clear plan and a steady process to move into OKEU, which we did successfully, and a clear decision based on a forensic report, not forensic from money, a forensic from engineering perspective, report on the old St. Jude's. You promised transparency and accountability. You asked that there be proper reports. Where are the reports? 3 years you're going and doing things at OKEU. None of us know. You said previously that the 4 rooms would be open in June. It's August. Where are we going? It's safe to say that the opposition has completely lost confidence in this government. And this government has zero integrity. And transparency and accountability with this government does not exist. These are just words that are being sent. So I think that the $15 million solution right now is at a clear admission of his failure and his government's failure and the minister's failure. And I'm also asking the Prime Minister that the same gurus that were giving us the advice when we were in opposition, that they could have moved into St. Jude's in 4 and 10 months, are the same gurus that you're depending upon to give advice at OKEU. And that board, and in particularly that doctor, should be replaced and an immediate solution brought to bear on the problems at OKEU and also the problems at St. Jude's. I also want to take this time, if I can, to deal with the other situation here, which is CIP, and listening to comments that are being made. First of all, the Minister of CIP, who continues to, whether he knows it or not, to admit that he knows that there is discounting taking place and to justify it in the marketplace, is worrying and should be worrying to all of us. So for him to want to make a comparison between selling a home and the commission that you're going to pay for a home versus selling citizenship is again irresponsible and intended to fool people. They're not one and the same. The CIP is by statute. And I will play a tape this week of the CEO clearly stating that that's a fact. That the money goes into the escrow account. You know how much money goes into the escrow account. So if in fact you know that there's supposed to be $200,000 went into the escrow account, how is it you cannot tell us what the situation is? Now, the two ministers were on a show on Thursday last week. Two ministers in particular who have continuously refused to provide information to the public on issues, whether it be the Bonanza land, whether it be on CIP, whether it be on GPH. But they would sit there and hold in front of them the DSA agreement. So it's okay for those two ministers, to reveal details in a confidential agreement between the state and the government. But it's not okay for them to reveal information about GPH, the halls of justice, or CIP with Galaxy. And what is even more concerning is, like in the typical fashion of two con artists, because that's what both of them are, two con artists, is to pick selectively what they want. Again, a framework agreement is an approval in principle, and it's subject to the laws of St. Lucia. So this is to give the developer comfort that in principle we agree with what his strategy is. To come and say that there was an application for 9,000 files, they may have been. I don't recall that's the case, but they may have been. And DSH may have wanted to apply all of its projects as one CIP program. But the Alan Chastanet administration would never do that. Every single component of that project had to apply separately. Separately for DCA control approvals and separately for CIP. And that is why there was only one component that was approved under the CIP, which is the Alpina Hotel. The document clearly states that lands are to be leased, of which 400 acres was leased for the horse racing track. and the remaining amount of land to be purchased between 60 and 90,000 US dollars an acre. I'm waiting for the minister, because the minister said that I could never provide proof that DSH bought any lands for 60,000 US dollars. I have the proof. But I want to see if he's going to fulfill on his promise that he said that if in fact we provide that proof, he'll never speak about DSH again. I hope that he, in this instance, because I know in the past he's never been a man of his word, I'm hoping that in this instance he will be. The issue that is the most vexing and the most concerning, and all St. Lucians should be alerted to. If the infrastructure program, and they are following the procedures that were put in place with an escrow account, are being done properly, meaning you don't issue the citizenship unless you have proof that the $200,000 is going into the escrow account. The issue with financing was dealt with very early by this administration, that said they're only going to be guided by how much money is in the escrow account. They're not going to recognize any financing agreements. And that the citizenship will only be issued if it's $200,000. And we now know, we could take it home as fact, that instead of 700 files, 6,000 files were allocated and have all been sold, because they said that the allotment has been done, that it's oversubscribed. So there's supposed to be over $1.2 billion in the escrow account. That is what we're going to hold everyone accountable to. US dollars. And if the hotel is only going to cost $300,000, where is the rest of the money going? People want to know what's the commonality between St. Kitts and St. Lucia. It is Les Can. Les Can was the CEO of the CIP unit in St. Kitts. What Emmanuel is here today is what Les Can was in St. Kitts. It was Les Can and Galaxy that came up with this idea of doing an infrastructure program, and specifically a prison. It is Les Can and Galaxy and the then administration that agreed that Galaxy would collect all of the monies and all of the fees, in exchange that they would build the prison. It was Les Can who came up to give them 5,500 files. And now the current government has done an audit, 26,000 passports have already been issued. Nobody knows how much Galaxy is collected because there's no escrow account. None. Nobody knows where the money is. They don't know what account that Galaxy's put the money in. All we know is that St. Kitts has given up 26,000 passports, and there's no prison. So Les Can gets fired when the new government came in and did their own audit. Said no, they don't want to do business with this man anymore. They don't want him representing St. Kitts anymore. So where does he go? He becomes the CEO of Galaxy. And he now convinces them, I believe, this is what I believe, increase the allocation of files to the real estate, the hotel, allow us to do the financing arrangement that we were doing before, and in no time they sold 6,000 files. Come on. Our administration in 5 years sold 800 passports. This administration, if the information that Emmanuel gave us is correct, 56,000 passports in 2 years. How do you do that? How do you do that? You do that by selling the passports for less than what your competitors are doing. It's the oldest trick. And the question is, who's benefiting when they do that? Galaxy, because all the files are going through Galaxy, Galaxy gets to choose who the lawyers are going to administer the files in St. Lucia. Who is going to get the $3,000 per file? That's 18 million US dollars just for processing fees to the lawyers, of which the information that we have says that Thaddeus Antoine is getting the vast majority. So after they sell out the infrastructure, the hotel project, they come up with this idea, now they're going to do an infrastructure program. So I want us to take a minute. We had a donation program that the Prime Minister admitted that when it clearly changed what they were doing at the hotel, I think in allowing them to sell it for a lesser price, means that people no longer were going to our donation program. Instead, they were going to the real estate program. That's in his budget. That's not my words. His budget. So today you're going to start an infrastructure program for $100,000. You have a donation for $100,000. The donation money goes into your economic fund. The $100,000 for the infrastructure goes into Galaxy's account. That's where it goes. So we don't know how much money they're collecting, whatever. And you give them 7,000 files. So if they're doing it right, and if we can force Galaxy to collect the $100,000, that is 700 million US dollars. And the government said that Galaxy is going to forward 100 million. So I'm asking you, why would you give that many passports away to get a $100 million infrastructure program when you can do it through your donation program? And there's no controls. When the money goes into the escrow, into the economic fund, the government came in, when they came in and changed the legislation and have allowed cabinet to decide where the money is going to be spent. So if they want to spend it on a housing project, they can. If they want to spend it on roads, they can. If they want to help kids with scholarships, they can. Whatever they want to do. If they want to divide it every year and see they're going to divide it evenly among all of the people in the country, they're going to do that. So the Prime Minister has also indicated that he's not in charge. He's a person that delegates, and that once he gives assignment, that he doesn't find out what's going on. Again, that's against our Constitution. The Prime Minister is the minister of all ministries. That's why it's called the Prime Minister. Remember, he holds the role of Prime Minister and a part and parcel of that as the Minister of Finance and Economic Development. But the Prime Minister is the Minister of Health, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Infrastructure. You appoint ministers to serve at your pleasure. They are representing you. So I cannot imagine a person who is a 5-term parliamentarian and a deputy prime minister would not understand that. And therefore, all of the information that you're saying that you don't know, if you genuinely don't know, then we have even a bigger problem in this country. Because it means you're abdicating your role as the Prime Minister of this country and protecting the people of this country, protecting our democracy, protecting our Constitution, and making sure that the assets of this country are not wasted. That's your role. But if now you're denying it, and in fact that you do know, that's a problem. So Mr. Prime Minister, you said that the CEO, Emmanuel, went to Washington, D.C. by himself. When Emmanuel came back from the meeting, we had a press conference here and we showed the press statement by Emmanuel on CIP letterhead where he clearly stated that he had gone there to protect the reputation of the CIP unit. So one of you has to be fired because one of you is lying. You've repeated that you don't know. Why is it as Prime Minister, with all the things circulating, that you have not gone to find out how many files have been allocated. And as a person who has been in the financial business for a long time, it would not be difficult for you to calculate that if it is 200,000 at 6,000 files, $1.2 billion, that you would ask for a report from the escrow agent, you would see it yourself, that that money is there. That you would have worked through the process of the infrastructure fund. How do you want us to believe that you have not done that? You've repeated again that you don't know and you are not involved with Claude Emmanuel going to Washington, D.C. You've repeated to say that you're not involved in any of the details involving CIP. So I only hope that if the day ever comes and there's evidence that in fact that you were again lying to us, because we're becoming accustomed to you lying to us. But this is egregious because we're dealing with billions of St. Lucian, billions of dollars, and St. Lucia's reputation. A reputation that you all said that you all would safeguard on a statement of June 3rd, 2024. June 3rd, just this year. What did you say? Additionally, St. Lucia CIP unit publishes an annual report that is tabled in the Parliament, which includes audited financial statements. Have you done that? For 3 years, Mr. Prime Minister, you all have not done that. The government of St. Lucia remains committed to maintaining and reinforcing the integrity of its CIP program with a transparent and accountable process that delivers tangible benefits to all St. Lucians. Mr. Prime Minister, you have failed us. You have betrayed the trust of the people. You are squandering incredible resources. And as was mentioned by one of my colleagues, over 4 billion EC dollars of money remains unaccounted for. And if you divide that by 180,000 people, that's $20,000 per person. And if you have a household with 4 people, that's $80,000 per household that has been squandered, that's been taken away from each citizen of this country. And you continue to act with impunity and with no integrity and no accountability. And I want to follow up on what Spider said. The time has come for the public to understand that sometimes law enforcement or the enforcement of our Constitution is through the will of the people. And that will is our voices. And it's time for our voices to be heard, that we demand that we see the GPH deal. That we demand that we see the details of the halls of justice. That we demand that we see what is going on in the deal that's taking place at St. Jude's and HIA. And that we demand to see what is taking place at CIP. And the people of St. Lucia must hold this government accountable for the promises that they're making and not delivering on. And that day is coming very soon. We need to prepare ourselves and brace ourselves and research the information I've provided. I thank you this morning.
There are just a couple of questions from the press.